we go. Hey, everybody, and welcome to this week's Webinar Wednesday. Steve Dotto here, along with April. We're going to have a lot of you in the room today. We already got 260. Going to have to give it a few seconds. We've got like nearly 1,900 people registered right now, April, so it'll take a second for Webinar Jam to get everybody in the room. But while you're coming in, let me fill you in on the agenda and the plans for today's Webinar Wednesday. We're going to be talking about Google Calendar. As you all know, we're going to be talking about the new release and the new refresh of Google Calendar. And as usual, we are going to be recording the entire webinar, and we will be sending out a replay once the webinar is over. So if anybody has any technical problems, if you need to run away for any reason, if the webinar is just so darn awesome that you need to share it with everybody in your life, you're going to be getting a replay link sent to you once we are all said and done. Now, we're using Webinar Jam today again. I think we've solved all of the issues that we had last week. Last week, we were having a little bit of just an audio challenge. If you take a look on the right-hand side of your screen, you'll see the chat window there. And so we encourage you to say hello. And there's so many of you. I see Todd from Tulsa and Jeff from Cincinnati. Yeah, lots of people here. We're up to 448 people in the room. I think wow. Today's webinar is going to be a record for Webinar Wednesday. I think when we did a product launch before, we had a webinar with 2,000 people registered. 2,100, I think, was the record. But this is definitely a record for Webinar Wednesday. So thanks to everybody. Obviously, I think just a perfect storm. The fact that Google's finally released a new version of Calendar, something that everybody uses. And year end, we start thinking about being a little more organized next year, don't we? So it's a good time for us to be bringing forward Google Calendar. So I'm looking forward to that. Now, if you have any issues, April's here and she'll deal with the technical issues that you have. Typically speaking, you'll notice there's a reconnect button at the top of your screen. If you have any issues, if our audio and video get out of sync, just hit that reconnect before you panic. And before you do anything else, you can also refresh your browser. And if that doesn't work, you can always try another browser if you're having issues.
Wow, Steve, you wouldn't believe where we have everybody literally all over the world. Germany, Switzerland, Maui, the States. We have somebody from Greece. I mean, like, Peter from Edmonton, welcome Madrid, everybody. It's awesome.
This is huge. Yeah, we're over 500. I don't think I've ever seen the number of people in the room over 500.
Hey, Michael from Dublin.
Hey, guys. And, well, just hello to everybody. We're obviously not going to be able to say hi to you all individually. So here's the agenda today. As per usual, this is going to be a hybrid webinar, meaning that in a few moments now, I pre-recorded the demo where we go through all of the different main features and the main kind of presentation part. It's about 23 minutes of video. And as soon as that's done, while that's running, I will jump into the chat and I'll answer as many of your questions in chat as I can. One of the things that I love about the community that comes together here in Webinar Wednesday is there's so many of you that know a lot about the products as well. And so the fact that you end up answering each other's questions while you're in chat, I find really adds to the value of the webinars, and it's a really nice feeling. So I'll be looking forward to that. I can use the support today with so many of you in the room, 540 or so far. Now, I know a lot of you are our patrons supporting us on Patreon, and we want to set a big shout out to you all and say thank you so much for your ongoing support. dottotech, the channel, and our entire team is supported by the generosity of you people who attend our weekly webinars through the crowdfunding site Patreon. So there's a lot of you in the room, and if you identify yourself and say a patron here, we certainly appreciate your ongoing support. And we'll fill you in for those of you that don't know about how Patreon works and why it's so important to us getting out all of the great free content. We'll fill you in on that after we're through with the main content today. Patreon rules. Indeed, it does, Christine. All right, so I think that's pretty much it. As I say, if you have any issues, we'll be dealing with you in chat. As soon as the video starts running, I will jump into the chat and be there with you as well. But let's kind of get going and let's get rocking and rolling with this thing. So let me get the video queued up, and then we'll also fill you in towards the end of the day on what's happening for the rest of the year, because this is we're winding things down here in dottotech. I move houses on the 21st of December.
That's exciting, stressful, and overwhelming.
It's crazy. Who moves on December 21st?
I know. Me. You. Well, I moved on November 23rd, the day before Thanksgiving last year. So not as crazy as Christmas.
Yeah, there we go. All right, let's jump in and let's get this video running. We will see you folks on the other side, and we'll see you momentarily in chat. Let us dive in and take a look at the new and refreshed, finally, Google Calendar. After much waiting, we finally have a new version of Google Calendar to work with, which is much more appealing than the old version. It was starting to look a little long in the tooth. Now, the calendar space has always been interesting. There's a lot of confusion around the calendar space, which I'll talk about in a few moments. But the great sorrow that many of us have in calendars is, well, I'm happy using Google Calendar. I've always thought it was a tool that fit for me. And I'm sure you're probably happy with calendar tools that you've used. There was one tool that we used to use, which we all loved, which was called Sunrise Calendar. And unfortunately, Microsoft bought Sunrise Calendar, and they sunsetted Sunrise Calendar. They basically took the team, distributed it, took a lot of its best features, incorporated it into other things. But we lost what was, for many of us, our favorite calendar tool. Now, Google has stepped up to the plate and improved Google Calendar significantly, and to the point that I don't really miss Sunrise as much as I probably, I've kind of forgotten a lot of some of the features. But they've now incorporated an awful lot in Google Calendar that makes it work for me. Now, is Google Calendar the absolute best choice of calendar? Could be. I'm not going to say it is or it isn't. But it is the tool that I choose to use, and I'll articulate those reasons as we move ahead. So in the video today, we're going to talk about the new version. We're going to take you through a demo so you can see as many of the new features as I've kind of figured out in the new version and see the new look. Talk about some of the basic functions. Because one of the things that surprises me about talking to others about calendars, and when I deal with other people with calendars, is many of the basic functions people don't use, or they don't know they're there, or they don't necessarily understand. So we're going to go through a lot of the basics. We're going to talk about the most powerful aspect of calendars, which is sharing and publishing, being able to coordinate your calendar with others, or integrating your calendar with other tools. So we're going to kind of try and go through as much of that as we can. But let's first talk about the problem with calendars. The problem with calendars is we often end up splitting our calendars between multiple tools. Some of us split it between digital and analog life, where we carry around a physical calendar and then we have a digital calendar, and so they always aren't on the same page. That's a problem, obviously. But also, when you buy a new phone, like typically, you get an iPhone, and Apple's got their calendar app on here. And if you start putting in appointments in your ICal, in your Apple Calendar, and you're using Google Calendar, you can end up having kind of competing calendars, and it gets confusing. And if you've done this for too long, if you've kind of worked out ways to make it work with multiple calendars, you're basically in a mess, and it takes you a little while to kind of extract yourself from it. So I firmly believe that the solution to this is you have to commit to the Lord of the Rings of calendars. One calendar to rule them all. You need to choose a single calendar and run with it. You can use that calendar to integrate with other tools. For example, if I suddenly got hired tomorrow by a company that was a Microsoft Outlook company, and I had to use Microsoft Outlook as a calendar, I could sync my Google Calendar and have all of the calendar appointments and all of that stuff migrate over into Outlook and make sure that they talk back and forth. But always, I'm going to think in my head that my one calendar that I rely on is Google Calendar. So if you have one that you trust, then everything else can kind of riff off of that, but that is one calendar. So choose one. And I don't care which one you choose. If you're in Outlook, you can choose Outlook Calendar. If you're going to do that, going to go that route, there's a lot of different different choices of calendar, but stick to one and don't keep jumping around, or we can't help you. So why is Google Calendar the best bet? Well, for me, the flexibility that it offers, the fact that I can use it and I can integrate it with almost any other service, the fact that it's cloud-based, which means that I have access to my calendar at any point, anywhere that I am. And let's not forget the fact that I'm pretty happy using the Google suite of tools. I've pretty much bought into the entire Google family of tools, so obviously it fits elegantly within that family of tools. So Google Calendar is an easy choice. I don't think it's ever a wrong choice to use Google Calendar if you're gonna commit to Google Calendar as your tool of choice. So let's kind of dive in now and let's take a look at the new and refreshed calendar. But before we do, if you were using the existing version of the calendar, it's very easy for you to migrate over and switch to the new version. There's just a button where you can click on that, and it will take you into and basically reload the calendar and bring you to the new and updated version. And I think Google thinks, I don't know if they've announced it anywhere, but I think that they think now this is they've always said that their software is beta before. Remember we used to have beta version of this and that. And we could tell because there was always this area in Google Calendar, as there is in Gmail, which was called Google Labs, where they had all these different tools that they were testing. I haven't found Google Labs in Calendar. Now, it might still be there, and I might just not have found it from all my poking around. But I think that they've retired it, which means they probably consider this version of Google Calendar to be their solid shipping version, which is pretty exciting. It was fun to play with the different Google Labs features, but it's good that they've formalized it now. And once you've upgraded it, you are going to have a new, much cleaner look. And basic navigation is pretty similar to the old version of the calendar. You've got the ability to switch your views here to go from your day at a glance to your week, month at a glance. And they've got this nice feature here called Schedule, which allows you to just basically take a look at all of your different appointments coming up, as opposed to seeing it in a calendar view. I find that pretty useful to kind of see what's coming up. And for the most part, I tend to work in the week at a glance. Of course, you have all of your different appointments laid out in front of you. And down the left-hand side here, you've got a global calendar, plus you've got access to all of the different calendars that you're subscribed to. Let's go to this week. There we go. Now, these calendars are ones that either you own or ones that people are sharing with you or that you've subscribed to. And we'll be talking a lot more about the subscription side of Google Calendars in just a few moments. But as is always the case, you should always go in and take a look at the settings to see exactly what options you have and how you manage the calendar. And so that's all found here under the gear icon, where we go in and we take a look and manage all of the different settings. And we'll be diving in and out of the settings as we go along today. But here's where you go in and you set all of your preferences up for calendar, such as the time zone you're in, that sort of stuff. So it's they've kind of streamlined. There's really no hidden places to work in Google Calendar anymore. Everything is pretty much on the surface. Now, they've incorporated some of the look and feel from the mobile app, such as having this little plus icon here that allows you to create a new event. And if you want to just create a new appointment in your calendar, you can click on that plus icon and then enter all of the information. We'll return to this screen in a few moments. But you can also, as you've always been able to do, just click on that time in the calendar itself, and you can add content here, and you can add and basically quickly add an appointment here as well. So that gives you that ability to be able to do it interactively or through the navigator here at the bottom. Now, when we go into the full screen, you can incorporate additional content that wasn't always available in Google Calendar. For example, take a look down here in the bottom. See in the description, it's a full HTML description in here. So you can put in things like web links and all sorts of other things in here to help communicate better. And I'll illustrate why that's important. Let's say that you're setting up an appointment, and it's not just an appointment for you, but you're going to be making an appointment with a guest. So let's say that we are going to have a Zoom call. I want to have a video conference call with somebody on my team. So I can go in here and I can add a guest, and let me just add April to this call. April, sorry, you're going to have to join me for this meeting. If I add April to this call, and then I say, let's meet on Zoom, and then I can put the link in. Either I can just put the link in. I'm just going to use our quick. There we go. That's the Zoom link so that we can jump in a call. Or I could actually take that URL and I could make it a hyperlink just by clicking on this little link tool here and putting it in here. So now we've created a rich text environment, or an HTML environment within the email that we're creating, which then email, should I say, appointment that we're creating, which will then be emailed to the people that are the prospective guests. When I save this, time for a meeting. There we go. And then when I save, actually, what's under more actions? I haven't checked it. Oh, I can move it to different calendars, etc. I can publish it. Okay, that's interesting. But really what we are typically going to do is you're going to save it. When you go to save it, it's going to send this as an email. And that email, they will then have the opportunity to reply or to say yes, they can make it, or no, they can't. And of course, they will get the connection information as well, all here, and they can save it to their calendar from that email. So that gives you some really nice options for setting up meetings. As a matter of fact, in the Google Apps, the paid version of apps, you can even manage resources like meeting rooms or ball fields or projectors, audio visual gear. You can have it manage different assets as well, which is pretty cool, especially in the Scholastic environment. That sort of thing is very cool. Now, as you go through, you can add other things, such as adding locations, which we'll put in map locations, which is terrific because if you set up a meeting using Google Calendar and you've got a location, then just when it syncs with your phone, it will give you directions to get there and also tell you how long it's going to get there, and even let you know using Google Assistant when you should be leaving before it, based on traffic conditions. So that it really extends into a lot of really kind of fairly compelling areas as we start to see Google Calendar start to work with all of the other Google suite of tools. Now, this next one, adding conferencing, this really excited me because I thought, I can add my own conferencing solution, such as, say, Skype or Zoom. But no, it's only the Google solution of adding a Hangout if you want to add a conferencing thing. So that was moderately disappointing in the new version. You can let it know how soon you want to be notified, of course, setting times and all of that sort of stuff for the item. So you've got all of these different options for setting up meetings or setting up appointments within the appointment screen itself. So the actual managing of your time is, I think, quite elegant with how it works as far as having people verify whether or not they're available for meetings and manage all of that sort of communication. But for most of us, the real key to calendars is managing our time, but also managing how our time fits with others. And this is where your list of different calendars that you have down the side here comes into play. So I've got multiple calendars that I've set up that are my own, that I use for things like myself, and say I keep the webinar schedule of all of our different webinars here, as well as an editorial schedule for what we have to be creating content-wise. So I've got all of these different calendars I own. But down below it, there are other calendars that are owned by other people or are synced from others that I also subscribe to that enrich my life in one way or another. So here's my partner, Shan. Here's her work schedule. So she's got a calendar that I share my calendar with her, but she also shares her calendar with me. Now, it's not cluttering up my screen right now, but if I click down when Shannon is actually working, she's a teacher that works part-time, here we see the times when she is going to be teaching over the next little while, so I can see when she's available and when she's not, and how that overlays with different things for me. And so that she also can see this, so she can decide, hey, if we want to go and do something together, she can see my calendar and determine whether or not I have availability to do something with her. So that's a really nice, we should all be sharing calendars with our family. Now, I love the ability to be able to turn them on or off, and also color code them depending on the person. So that way you can immediately identify who you are looking at when you take a look at the calendar. I keep all of my calendar appointments in blue. Everybody else's is in a different color. Now there's a couple of synced calendars here, say coming from Asana, which I'll show you in a few moments, which really it is where we start to get into the whole integration space. Now, how do you go about sharing a calendar with somebody else and sharing your calendar? Well, you can just open by right-clicking on the drop-down dots. You see here we have the three dots that expand the selection. By choosing my own calendar here and expanding it out, I can go into the sharing and settings, which are still part of the settings, but it's a shortcut into the settings where you go into the sharing. And there you can choose right here to add people to the calendar to share it with, which will publish it straight through to them. If they've got a Gmail account, it'll just appear in there. It'll ask if they want to access the account. It'll ask them for permission, but then it will just share your calendar with them, which is a dead simple way of sharing calendars and making it easy. But there's a whole bunch of other ways to share calendars too. If we scroll down to the bottom here, we see integrating the calendar, where you can take your calendar ID and you can use these different URLs to be able to use the calendar in a variety of different applications. Now, we don't have time to go into all of them today, but regardless if you're an Outlook or if you want to publish your calendar onto a website or any of these sorts of things, this gives you the ability to do that. And the reason this works is Google Calendar is a cloud-based service, which means all of the different appointments and all of the different calendars that we have are stored in the cloud, and they can be accessed if you have permission, and they can be accessed through a standard web browser type interface and integrating through a web browser interface. So that's what gives us the flexibility of sharing this data in so many different ways. That's one of the reasons I like Google Calendar so much, is the fact that it lives in the cloud means that it's really easy for us to integrate with other services. Now, while we're taking a look here at sharing the calendar, you've seen that how we can share it with a partner, with a friend, but there's also a whole bunch of different pre-populated calendars that you may or may not be interested in. So if you go in here and you can browse, this is where you go, by the way, to create a new calendar if you want to create a new one for yourself. But if you want to go in and take a look at calendars of interest, these are all published calendars. Now, you can create your own calendar that you share with others, which might be the schedule of events at your school or your kids' hockey schedule. You can share all of those events with other parents that are within the team or that sort of stuff. So you can create lots of published calendars that people can access, which really streamlines their life and kind of gets everybody on the same page. And really what we see here are just kind of grown-up versions of those published calendars. So for example, if I have, of course, a hockey calendar in the National Hockey League. I'm a Vancouver Canuck fan. So you can see here that I'm subscribed to the Vancouver Canuck calendar. So if we go back and we take a look in my calendar itself here, I can, just by clicking here, turn on and see when the Canucks play every, in the upcoming schedule. And there's 3 Canuck games coming up this week. And the cool thing is, actually, I got to show you this. Not just because they won the game, but here we go back to last week, and there the Canucks played the Toronto Maple Leafs, and look, we won 2-1. That was a really good game. I really enjoyed that. But it even the calendar updates with the scores of previous matches, which is kind of cute and kind of fun. So if there's a team that you follow, if there's anything that you follow in that way, you can choose to subscribe to a published calendar. And certainly when you start thinking about, incorporating, having your kids' school put all of their events and publish all of their events in a calendar, it becomes a very, very powerful tool. What days are days off, what days are pro D days for your teachers, etc. Now I want to spend a few minutes and talk to you about syncing your calendar with other services. And I'm going to show you one example because we've often talked about Asana here on in the dottotech channel. And it's the tool that we use for all of our project management. But it's also not the most elegant integration with Google Calendar. Yet despite the fact that it's not a super elegant integration, it works like a hot damn. So I'm going to walk you through how you actually end up integrating Google Calendar with Asana, all of the tasks and all of the appointments and all of the scheduling coming out of Asana, so you get a feel for it. And if it works in this way here, and even though it looks a little bit cumbersome, it's not all that bad and you can work your way through it, you can be certain that you can work your way through it with the applications that are important to you. So let me just take you into it. So in Asana, basically, we've got these different projects that we cover. For example, we've got all of our different webinars here. And these are the webinars that are coming up and the webinars that we've done. And this is how we manage and plan all of our webinars. And because they're all set by date, there's an actual calendar right within Asana that has all of our upcoming webinar Wednesdays. And they're all attached here to a calendar. But this calendar doesn't just, there's not just a simple button. I wish there was a simple button that I could click on and say, sync this with Google Calendar. Some tools have that integration. This one doesn't. But watch what I have to do. I just go here, and it's a little obtuse, but you go to the export menu within the menu within each of the projects, and there you ask it to sync to a calendar. When you choose sync to a calendar, it will then generate for either ICal, or in this particular case for Google Calendar, it will generate this URL. Do you see that URL right there? What you do, and it gives you directions right here. It says go to Google Calendar and then add calendar by URL, and then you basically just paste this URL in, and then it's being published out through this web link that Google Calendar can then read. So let me show you how the rubber meets the road on that. All you do is you go back to Google Calendar and you add another calendar from URL, just like they said. You bring that up, you put in the URL of the new calendar, And then you've got, I didn't copy and paste it. That's my old URL. Sorry. Let's go back to Asana and let's copy this because I highlighted it without copying it. Let's copy it. Let's go back to Google Calendar and then paste that link in. There it is. So then we can add this calendar. And when we add this calendar, I'm not going to do it because I don't need duplicate calendars. But once we add this calendar, what will end up happening is you will have here the ability for me to view all of my webinars that are in Asana. And if I click here, you can see there's all of the tasks related. Let's go back to this week. There's all of the tasks here related to my webinars. I'll turn that off so it's not cluttering up. I turn it back on, and there's all of the tasks related to Webinar Wednesday being put onto my calendar. So I can see the due dates. So you can see that the integration works. And even though that seemed a little bit cumbersome, once you've done it once, and actually it's the sort of thing that you kind of have to almost read through the instructions every time you do it because you don't do it on a regular basis. You just have to do it once, and then it's there for you. But the fact that now Google Calendar can talk to Asana, I can create new new responsibilities that are time-based, date-based in Asana, and I can see them now being reflected within Google Calendar. That to me it shows just how brilliant that integration is. And you can see from a productivity standpoint just how well it's going to work. Now, this integration, of course, continues on. We're not going to spend time looking at our smartphone, but the Google Calendar app, of course, has apps on both Android and iOS smartphone. And every time we make a change in the desktop version, it's reflected back within the app on our smartphone. And once it's on our smartphone, of course, things like navigation and all of that jump into play as you're going from appointment to appointment and timing and all of that sort of stuff. So this kind of the fullness of integrating one single calendar that reaches out, kind of has a spider web that reaches out and pulls all of the different appointment-related and calendar-related information from all of your different devices, hosts it in a single place, and then make sure that you have access to it when you need it. That's really the strength of Google Calendar. And I think they've made it look a lot more appealing. It's nice when you open your calendar and it's got a nice, fresh, appealing look, and Google has certainly done that. I know that we're going to see new skins available and ways to make it, change the colors. And actually, when you do enroll for the first time, when you switch over to the new calendar or for the first time, you can choose to have the light theme or the dark theme. So I chose the light theme, as you can see here. Now, if you do, for whatever reason, not like this, you can go back to the classic calendar by going under the gear icon at any point and go back to the original version. And I imagine this is going to be available for a while. But I'm not positive exactly how long it'll be available for. This is a deep application. We can spend a lot more time talking about it, but I think we should go now and start handling all of the Q&A.
All right, let's answer some questions.
Absolutely.
Our friend Brad is asking, does Google Calendar now allow guests without Gmail or Google email addresses?
Yeah, it'll send out a calendar invite, and it uses that ICS standard format. So you can invite people that don't have a Google account, and they'll be able to enter it and publish it into whatever calendar they have. That'll be part of the invite. Yeah.
All right. Sandy's asking, last week, all my Google Calendar entries vanished from my tablet. All the Outlook, Hotmail entries are still there, but gone are the Gmail entries. Has anyone else had these entries disappear?
I would say that you probably lost the sync. Is that for some reason the integration between your Google Calendar and your tablet's calendar got broken? So
and that's happened to me when I've
republish
changed passwords.
Yeah.
Yeah. Alice, let's see. Audios. What are the small circles besides the names? What are those for?
Oh, here in the chat, that's to demark something as a question so we can more easily identify. When we have this many people in the room, all the chat goes by too fast, so we can separate out all of the questions, and so it's easier for us to answer the questions that way.
All right. Karen is saying, I learned from you a couple years ago how to quickly scroll across months on a small monthly calendar. When I tried the new Google Calendar a couple weeks ago, I couldn't do that. Do you know if that has or will be fixed?
They do have a year at a glance, so you can see the full year in it, but I don't know if they're going to be making any other changes to the interface.
Okay. Do you ever worry about privacy, having Google know so much about your life?
Yeah, and this is where, this is a fascinating part of it. I'm not sure whether we got to this part in the demo, but here's what happens. And yes, privacy is a concern, and it's something that we should all be paying attention to. But there's this kind of this risk versus reward that we consider. The more information you give to Google, obviously the more they know about you, but the more they can do for you. Case in point, with the new Google Calendar and Google Maps real-time data that Google Maps is collecting from all of the people that are logged on to Google that are traveling about on the roads, this can happen. I have an appointment at XYZ location. Google Calendar knows that I'm at home because my Google account knows I'm at home, and it knows it's going to take 20 minutes to get to XYZ location. So it's going to give me a reminder 20 minutes before I have to be there that I should be leaving for the appointment. But because it's integrated with Google Maps and it realizes that the most popular routes are all clogged with congested with traffic and it's going to take me 40 minutes, it will upgrade when it's telling me it's time to leave. That functionality is there. The more information we share, the more Google can do, and the more it's pulling parcels and pieces of data from all sorts of places. And it's not just you giving up some privacy at that point. All those people that are on the road, so that Google knows that that the traffic congestion is happening, they've given up a percentage of their privacy as well. So that combination gives you tremendous value coming back. Now, so at what point is it too much? That's a really good conversation to have. Personally, I'm still comfortable with the exchange, the quid pro quo that's happening, but it's something that we should always be asking ourselves as we move ahead, for sure.
Okay, let's see. Sorry, I was going back through chat here. All right. Frederick is saying your video stream looks great. What's your upload speed?
Well, at the point, that was a preloaded video that I had pre-recorded as far as the demo goes, which is where we ran into the trouble. But I've got a pretty solid, I've got a 50 megabits per second upstream on this particular connection. Although when we move houses, we're having fiber to the new office. So it's that's one of the
going to outdo us all.
Location. It's brand new construction, so I have fiber.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's unbelievable.
Yeah,
can Google Calendar events be moved around like Trello cards? A lot of buffering happening. May need to download this. Oh, all right. So can Google Calendar events be moved around like Trello cards?
You can just grab a calendar event in the calendar and it interactively drag it from one day to another. So when you have a meeting with somebody and they postpone it for a couple of days, you can just grab it and drag it to the time that it's actually going to occur, and it's fine. Yeah.
Can you review how you switch versions again?
Okay, so if you've got the classic version, they call it classic. If you've got the classic version of Google Calendar, you go to you'll see at the very top right-hand side of the menu, let's say, do you want to try the new version of the calendar? Do you want to try the new calendar? When you click on that, your account will reload and you'll be brought into the new interface, and you will lose the ability to you'll lose things like the old Google Labs feature isn't in it anymore. And so you're in the new version, which seems to be a complete shipping version, like no more beta stuff, because so all of the functions are there. You can't add new functionality from things like Google Labs, but it's all there. If you want to return to the classic version at any point, you go under the gear icon, which is where you go into your settings, and there it will say revert to classic. I think that's going to be available for a period of time. I don't know how long that will be available to you, but it's definitely going to be available for the next little while, the ability to go back and forth.
All right, our friend Rob is asking, does search look backwards and forwards or only forwards? My current version of Google Calendar doesn't look back.
I don't actually know. I've never tested that. Maybe somebody else would know that, but I haven't ever tested that.
All right, Marnie is asking, how do you find using Google Calendar as an editorial calendar for social?
So what we do is we're not using Google Calendar per se, but instead we configure all of our planned posts in Asana as tasks and projects. And then they live in a calendar in Asana, and we sync that calendar through to Google. So I see the calendar being reflected that way. That's the way that it works for me.
What I could not find, can you review where the default colors are, how to change the colors in your calendar?
Do that. I believe that you do that. If you just take a look on the right-hand side, if you look at any of the, if you hover your mouse over any of the calendars and you click on that calendar, there'll be a series of colors that pop out. So you've got those three little dots. So where you look is not on the calendar itself, but you look on the left-hand side of the screen in the sidebar where you've got a list of all of your calendars, and then you assign the colors to each individual calendar by clicking on that little drop-down, which is those 3 dots. That gives you extended information about that particular calendar. That's also where you go to change the sharing settings for the calendar.
All right. Marie is asking, can you migrate appointments from the Apple Calendar to Google?
Yes, you can sync them both. Once you sync them, the calendar, the settings will go back and forth. In the Apple world, what you do is you go into your account settings and you choose to add a Google account and choose it as your calendar settings. I tend not to use Apple's calendar anymore. Once I don't use any calendar except Google Calendar once I kind of set things up. When I determined that I wanted to use Google Calendar, I installed the Google Calendar app on my iPhone, and I use Google Calendar in the browser as my calendar. It works going either way, but there's just more moving parts if you still use the Apple Calendar, and it's easy to break. The same reason I don't use Apple Mail anymore is there's too many moving parts that can break. Even though the syncing should work and it should all be fine, I don't have confidence that it always remains fine, so that's why I go that way.
And I did put the link in for you, Murray, again, so you have it on how to do that if you decide to. Avi is asking, what did you do to add the Zoom link with a hashtag? What is the shortcut?
Oh, I'm using a tool called a TextExpander, which we use for creating shortcuts. And we use that. That's a productivity tool. We've shown it quite a bit. There's links to it, or there's videos on how to use TextExpander in our on our YouTube channel. It's now a Windows and Mac application, but that's how I added the Zoom link. Is I use a hashtag for Zoom. I use it for all sorts of. We use it for all sorts of things. It's a keyboard shortcut tool.
All right. How does the more actions come up? It is missing from my calendar screen.
More actions. I'm not too sure. More options. Just when I click on it, if you're not seeing it, you might refresh. You might not have the refresh calendar. You might not have updated your calendar.
Sorry.
Okay, watch one of my videos. Yeah, so I'm not too sure how that's what you're missing there.
Okay. Let's see. Jack is asking, is it possible to put assigned tasks into calendar?
No, I don't think that you can assign tasks in calendar because Google Calendar is not a task manager. That's one of the reasons that we use a tool like Asana, is we assign the tasks in Asana and then they're reflected in that individual's calendar and then they can be imported. But you can't go in and you can't assign tasks in Google Calendar. Having said that, you can manage assets if you're using the paid version of Google Calendar, things like rental units, or, like I mentioned, like in a school, you could have a room that you can schedule the room and that sort of stuff. You have that ability within it, but you can't assign tasks to individuals.
Let's see. How do I set up text alerts?
Text from your Google Calendar. I don't believe that there's any way to do it. You have to use a tool like IFTTT and set up a rule.
I did put the TextExpander YouTube video in the chat for everybody.
Thank you.
Let's see. When I try to edit Google Calendar, it closes on me. Any thoughts?
I'm not too sure what's happening there. Again, if you've got multiple accounts open, that might be a problem. I did have problems with Google Calendar not refreshing properly when I had 2 accounts open in Chrome. That might be just a teething thing from it being still early because it's constantly being updated. And I imagine they're going to have, they're going to be revising it very rapidly as it gets stress tested.
All right. Search is not consistent. If I have an entry on February 14th and search today, will search go back in time, or do I need to go back to one of?
We had that question already. I don't know whether search works, but how search works there.
Mm-hmm. Can it sync with Nosby?
Nosby, yes. Yeah, it'll sync with any tool. You just have to basically do a quick Google search on how to, syncing Google Calendar with it. Quite often there's going to be a native integration built into that tool. Sometimes you're going to have to do it by publishing.
All right. Does functionality differ on the mobile version?
The new version really brings it very close to look and feel to the mobile version. So it's virtually identical at this point.
All right. Rob is saying, I'm very visual, thus created too many calendars by topic person with unique colors. Now needing to cull calendars. Before deleting some, can I do global merges to incorporate, like, for example, employee blue calendar, Bonnie with existing employee?
Yeah. I don't know if you can do it. You can definitely export a calendar as an ICS file, and you can probably import all of those calendar appointments. But I'm not positive on how to do that. I've never done it. It's a little too granular. I'm pretty sure you could work your way through it, but it's going to take a little bit of research.
Okay. What are your thoughts on using BusyCal or Fantastical, either on the desktop or mobile?
Those are great calendars, and they're very popular. Again, I just try not to. After having kind of been burned with the whole Sunrise calendar situation, where we started to use a tool that we really liked and it was working for us, and then that calendar went away, I just have decided that I think I have to cut my losses and to just stay with Google Calendar, work within its limitations, and they're very few. I mean, it does the job.
Okay. Ever since I switched to the new Google Calendar, my events are showing up with lots of HTML code in them, which is very hard to read both on Mac and iPhone. Is there a way to fix it?
I don't know why that would be. Are you viewing them in the browser, or are you viewing them in the Google Calendar app? I would suggest, instead of viewing your calendar in the browser, in the iPhone browser, you try using the Google Calendar app on your phone, and I think you'll find it's far more elegant.
All right. Debbie's asking how she can get invites to future webinars.
Oh, sign up for our mail list. Then we let you know what every webinar there.
All right. What happens?
And that's available. Just go to dottotech.com there, and you can sign up.
What happens if you have multiple calendars for different Gmail accounts? Is there a way to show multiple Gmail calendars in one general calendar?
Yeah, absolutely. So you just on the side, every calendar you have has a little checkbox next to it on the left-hand side. By clicking on and off those checkboxes, you choose to display the calendar data from each one of those calendars.
Okay. Let's see. We already did that. We did that one. Can you tell us how to import an iPhone calendar, like from your iPhone to Google Calendar?
How would you import the iPhone calendar?
So basically syncing your phone with your Gmail calendar.
Yeah, you just that's just in the account permissions. You set that up in accounts.
Okay.
We've got a video. I think we've got a video on that on YouTube. I'll have to look for it, but I think we've done that before.
Interested in knowing options to sync to other apps that have task notes and calendar and sync between iMac and iOS invites. All right. Looks like my friend Steve, we had a hiccup. He's coming back, friends. Mid-sentence there.
Sorry about that. I'm here.
All right. So we're interested in knowing options to sync to other apps that have task notes and calendar and sync between iMac and iOS devices.
You're going to have to say that again. I didn't quite catch it.
So I actually think we may have answered it. Like Asana has tasks in it. Any project manager syncing between what other applications that you can sync, like tasks to Google Calendar and back and forth. Trello.
Certainly any of the tools within the Google suite of tools are going to sync within the calendar very elegantly. And the other tools, just as we've discussed, there's often going to be a native integration that allows you to just say sync this with Google Calendar, or there's going to be a way for you to publish and pull the content into Google Calendar. Things like Trello will give you that.
Okay. Let's see. I was using You Can Book Me. Well, You Can Book.me, so others can book appointments. Any way to do that with Google Calendar?
Yeah, so all of the calendaring, all of the scheduling apps that we're talking about. So I've got Book Like a Boss. You've got this people are asking about Calendly, those sorts of things. Within all of those tools, there is native API integration with your Google Calendar. You'll authorize Google Calendar to authorize those applications to publish appointments to Google Calendar. And you can set thresholds so that you have to approve it before it gets entrenched on your calendar and that sort of stuff. But each one of those applications, and one of their features that they have to have, is the ability to publish to your calendar and also view your calendar, so know what your availability is, so they don't allow you to book something that you've blocked off on your calendar. It's because they've got to have that functionality as well. So we're going to be actually doing a video very shortly on a tool called Book Like a Boss, which I've decided is the tool that I'm using. But Calendly and all of those other tools, Schedule Once, all of them have that ability. That's a big part of how they work. And if you take a look at our videos on scheduling apps, you'll see that.
Okay. Let's see. Ken is asking, I use Outlook on my desktop and Google Calendar on my Android phone. Do you have suggestions on syncing these two systems together?
Yeah, you can just set up an integration between Google Calendar and Outlook. It's easy to find that. There's lots of documents on how to do it. That's the way that I would do it. But I would probably, if you're happy with Outlook on your phone, if you're happy using the Outlook calendar, if you can, I would try and figure out a way to use Outlook on your phone as well, rather than using both. Because although, unless there's a compelling reason that you need to use the Google Suite on your Android phone, I would like load the Outlook app.
All right.
I just as few variables as possible, and the difference between Google Calendar being better than Outlook or Outlook being better than Google Calendar, they're not really. Each one of them is going to have a few strengths and a few weaknesses against the other. Reducing the number of variables, especially in your calendar setup, means that you have far less confusion and far less chance that you're going to miss something that's important. So wherever possible, I would recommend you go single source as much as possible in this stuff. There are ways around it. Obviously, we always can't do that, but if you can, I would look at it. So I would take a good hard look at that in Android.
All right. Where can I find the links to the rolling chat? I'll give you the links to put in the replay that I put in the chat, because I think the chat moved too fast. What about Google Calendar and Evernote?
You can set up some integration between it, but again, Evernote's a note app. It's not really designed for calendaring. You can add some reminders in it that are date-based, but it's not a place for calendar. So I don't really worry too much about the integration. The odd time you need to have some, but it's very seldom that it's required. But you can integrate. You can. We've shown a couple of different tools that will allow you to integrate the two. We've got a few on the channel.
Will the Google Labs be in the new Google Labs?
No, I don't think so. In the new Google Calendar. I think that's why I'm saying that. I think that they're not calling it beta anymore because they've removed the Google Labs from it. I can't find it. So that must mean that think it's ready for prime time.
James was just helping out on one of the questions that you can scroll through the months just like you could before.
Okay, good.
Through the calendar. Where do you set up the default notifications time?
You set it up in the settings. In the settings is where you set all of that up, and how early you get your default notifications, and if it occurs in email, all of that happens there.
Does dottotech have a course on Google Apps?
Nope.
I got Google Calendar. Carlos is saying, I have Google Calendar on my iPhone. Is it safe to delete my iPhone calendar?
Probably. Probably, but I don't want to guarantee it.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
Jesse, yes, there will be a replay of the webinar. It'll be sent out, and it'll have the full proper demo video, and I'll trim out all of my bumbling as I was trying to make it the demo part work. It'll seem far more elegant than the live version.
Will it work with older Outlook and WebDAV? I'm not sure what that is.
Yeah, Google Calendar works. I mean, it's pretty ubiquitous. The ICS format, the calendar format, is a universal standard, so they all work together.
All right. Is there a way to see groups and contacts when sending an email from the calendar?
If you've got it, so the calendar will look to your contacts list to send emails. So I imagine it'll send it to groups that are within your Google contacts. I believe so. I haven't tested it, but I believe that won't be an issue.
Okay. Let's see. How do you get the Google mobile app?
You just go to the store of either the Android store or the Apple store, and you download Google Calendar.
All right.
And then you sign in with your Google account.
Let's see. Can you talk a little bit about Google Tasks or G Tasks on Google Calendar?
No, because I haven't used them very much, and it's actually research that I'm doing right now for a video. But Google Tasks, of course, integrates really well with Google Calendar, and it is a very clean solution because we need far more sophisticated task management than Google Task offers. That's why we use Asana. But it's something that stay tuned in the new year, and we'll be talking about them. But I can't speak to it too much right now.
Okay. Somebody was asking about syncing your calendar with Wunderlist. Yeah. I did put the link in the chat, but it also looks like it might need a zap from Zapier.
Okay.
All right. Russell is saying, in Asana, when you sync with Google Calendar, it puts it up at the top of the calendar like an all-day event. Todoist can set up tasks and lengths of time, and they come over as if you had created an event. Is there a way to do the same thing in Asana?
I don't think that Asana does do them as far as time-based, because there's no place in Asana to assign an actual time to the calendar. You can't set that. It's only set based on date due, not time and hour due.
Okay. How do I find year in a glance?
Just in the right-hand side, there's a top right, there's a menu drop-down that allows you to change your view settings.
All right, let's see. How do you sync so the entries you put in your phone show up on the computer browser? Currently, if I calendar it into my Google Calendar on my computer, it goes to my phone. But if I put it in my phone, it doesn't show in my Google Calendar on the computer.
That's because you're using the app, the calendar app on your phone, and it's not syncing back. So again, I would recommend that you install the Google Calendar mobile app and use that, and then it'll work both ways.
All right. Let's see. The day view on the new version puts each person's calendar in its own column. I work at a school and I have 18 plus calendars due to staff and room availability. I can't be scanning over to the right to look at everyone's calendar. Where is the combined view? I
don't know. That's a good question, but I don't have the answer for that. That's excessive. That's a lot of calendars you got to try.
That is a lot of calendars.
I would look for a team manager, and I'm sure there's some team manager apps that give you a unified view of the Google calendars, and it's probably an extra product. But I would look for that.
All right. What mail do you use? What mail do you use rather than Apple Mail or iPhone?
I use Gmail. In the browser. That's what I use as my standard.
All right. In my Google Calendar, when I set up a appointment, there's a make it a Zoom meeting button. No need no need to add a link.
She's got the legacy. She's got the full app suite. So that's encouraging to know that that's there. Frederick says that he moved into a new house and he has fiber, and he says it's fantastic. Looking forward to it as well. Rob is also asking, you showed us how to upgrade from Classic and the new version on PC, how to do so on Android phone. The Google Calendar, the app is the same on the phones. They haven't changed it. What they've changed is the desktop app. That's all we're talking about right now.
Okay. I'm still in Classic. Lately, I noticed that Google pulls appointments from emails, even if I don't plan to go to the event. Then I get reminded, what's up with this? How can I stop it?
Not too sure. That's a good thing to look into. I would do a Google search. So typically, because of the Gmail integration, it sees appointments coming in your phone and it adds them to your calendar. And usually, I've always thought that you have to say click add to calendar. So I don't know whether you've set a setting in or a default setting has changed in Gmail, but I suspect this is in Gmail, not in Google Calendar. The reason that it's coming in.
All right. Steve, what's in the brown bottle you're drinking from? Laugh out loud.
Water. This was a gift from Sue Zimmerman. It's one of those super expensive bottles. It's a swell bottle.
What's the difference?
It's expensive. The water's not expensive. The bottle is expensive. I saw them on Amazon. They're like $35 or something. It's ridiculous, but it does. It's an incredible thermos. It keeps your water cold for a long, long time.
Oh, okay. Let's see. Repeated. Some events have a color high. Okay, let's see. Sorry. Are all new Google Calendar features available on Google mobile app?
As far as I know. Yes. Oh, the mobile version? I don't know, but I believe it should be. You should be able to set that in the view preferences.
Okay. Avi has a question. It's a little bit off topic, but I could use your advice. It is Gmail related. A Gmail draft has been renamed undefined and added HTML codes throughout the email. Is there a way to remove the strip of HTML code so I can read the text in the email? It is a long email, so I'd like to remove the codes all at once.
I don't know.
And that sounds like a nuisance, really.
Yeah.
Rob is saying, I customize my PC GCalendar default as 2-week view, but my Android version of GCalendar doesn't offer a custom view. Can I do this?
I suspect not then. No.
Okay.
And one of the things that we'll always find with the app versions, the phone apps, is they're constantly going to be kind of leapfrogging each other, the iOS and the Android ones, and they're constantly updating those. So.
All right. Did Google resolve the issue that when people send you a calendar invite towards a different email address as your standard Google Apps address so you can respond? Wait a minute.
No, I know exactly what's happening.
Yeah. Okay.
If you have an email address and you have a different Gmail account attached to a different email address, when they send you a Google Calendar invite in your original email, it says that calendar is not found. They fixed it to a certain extent. It seems to be working fine for me currently because I have that. I have one Gmail account, but my email address is different. You can always do a workaround by doing a manual add to calendar, which gives you a button, but it just doesn't do the automatic responses. I believe that they've cleaned that up, but I'm not positive.
All right. Just adding on to Deborah, who's a power calendar sync coordinator. She said the old version of Google Calendar had the day view. So just your typical day at a glance view is what I want again. And yes, 18 calendar is extremely mind-boggling. So she's saying the old version, she had a day view so she could see it. Do you know if it'll be available in the new version? Because she's not seeing it yet.
She's not seeing day view. There is a day view. We certainly have a day view. And there's also a digest, or called a schedule view, which basically shows all of the appointments just as a list. So you might take a look at that as an option because you can have multiple calendars open and they'll all be color coded so you'll be able to see everything at once. I think probably what you're looking for is what they're now calling the schedule view.
Okay. What do you think about Google Inbox?
I've never really loved it. I use the Gmail app itself. A lot of people do love it, and I know it's far more app focused. It looks more like an app, but it never landed with me.
Okay. Rather than 1 hour increments, can we default to 30 minutes?
I don't know. Let me just take a quick boo while we're doing that. If I go into my settings, I wish I could show you this. I can't. Default duration 60 minutes. You can set event settings to whatever you want, 15 minutes or 30 minutes. So I believe that would probably change the kind of the gradient for you. Yes.
Okay.
I hope that does it. Not guaranteed, but it looks like it does.
All right. Rob is saying, I prefer my primary calendar to stand out in black. However, after a few days, it consistently defaults to green, which I assign to a different color and doesn't stand out as well. Problem on my end, I assume, or a known GCalendar issue.
Never heard of it, but I don't know. Sounds frustrating.
All right. Let's see. Tim, this is actually our last question. I avoid my GCalendar on my iPhone as I am logged in as me. And even though I have full admin, I'm very limited on my iPhone. At the office, if I manage everything and log in as the boss to make sure I can manage up to 15 calendars. Out of the office, I'm stuck. Any thoughts on making the mobile more workable? So yeah, it sounds like he's trying to do a little bit more management from his mobile app.
You have to do that within a browser version as opposed to using the app. And it doesn't sound like it would be easy on a small screen.
All right. And we had another question come in. Paul, go to a date. I get frustrated when I want to jump to a future date. If there is a quick way to do this, or do I have to scroll through each month to select the date?
If you go into the appointment itself, you can jump to any date you want through the quick pick in the calendar. If not, I think you have to navigate and scroll. But you can quickly scroll by just changing to the month or even year view and then clicking on the date you want, so that you don't have to scroll at that particular point.
All right.
And I see Stuart said the default to 30 minutes works. So that little workaround that we talked about, changing your meeting time to 30 minutes, worked. Good. Please make a course on Google Productivity Acts. Okay, Frederick, it's on the list. We've got big plans for next year. All right, so let's do this. Let's let everybody know about what's coming up next week and kind of give them an idea. I didn't get a chance to talk about. I'm going to just take a second now and thank everybody for supporting us on Patreon and all of that sort of stuff. So let me just jump into slide mode here. Hopefully that's going to work. There we go for just a moment here, and let you all know that there'll be a replay link of today's webinar that should be sent to you hopefully by the end. It'll be this evening because I've got a bunch of things that are coming up. It's going to take me a little while, and I've got some extra editing that I'm going to be doing on today's webinar to make it a little more digestible. But it'll be worth watching because of the extra demo video that we missed out. The video is going to be available to you for 48 hours, and after that it'll be archived. So what we do is we make these webinars, these trainings available for free for 48 hours, and then after that we archive them for the benefit of our patrons, the people that support us on Patreon. And we have to say a big shout out to you all our patrons, because they are the people, those of you that are supporting us on Patreon, that make these trainings and these tutorials possible. Basically what happens is dottotech is supported. We do sell courses and other things, but primarily all of this free content is supported as a result of the generosity of our patrons. So what happens is we ask you to consider supporting us at $10 a month. And that support keeps us on air, it pays our staff, and it keeps us creating this kind of content. And there are some perks that come back your way, and let me tell you about them. First of all, there's discounts on all of our courses, and actually next week we're going to be launching a reworked version of our screen casting course that's going to be called Online Video Makes Easy. Those premium courses are regular priced at $500. All of our patrons get them at $250 at half price. Our mini courses they only pay $10 for. And our Evernote Made Easy course, which is so popular, again, they pay half price for. So half price on all the courses. But even more important, you get access to each one of these webinars. This is the 41st webinar that we've delivered this year, since we started in January of this year. So there's 41 tutorial webinars that cover everything from WordPress for social marketing to productivity using Evernote, email overload, 3 steps to inbox zero, my productivity toolkit. We've got, as I say, 41 different tutorials that we have in the webinar archives that are available to our patrons. They can view them anytime they want. And we also add a whole bunch of additional support content into those archives. So that's the benefit to you. And the other benefit is your support keeps us going. It keeps us on air. So if you would be so kind as to consider supporting us, drop by patreon.com/dottotech. Take a look. And if you do decide to support us, thank you so much. And for our existing patrons, thank you. We appreciate your support enormously. Next week, we're going to do Webinar Wednesday number 42, and it's going to be our last Webinar Wednesday of the year. Now, originally we planned to do one on the digital detox next week because I was invited my friend Vicky McLeod on, and she's written the book Untrending. She talks a lot about how important it is for us to occasionally step away from our technology to clear the clutter from our mind. That was my plan for the last webinar of the year. Unfortunately, Vicky's had a friend who has a personal issue. Her mother passed away, and the funeral is on the day of our webinar. So obviously Vicky is going to be attending her personal matters. So we have a hole in our webinar schedule. Now, we were planning on letting people know about our new course coming up, which is our online video made easy, which is a reworked version of screencasting made easy. So we're going to launch that and let you people know about that next week. So anybody that wants to sign up, I think April will drop the link in. Next week, we're going to be talking about online video made easy. We're going to talk about creating your own video for courses, for webinars, for streaming applications. We're going to be talking about the creation process of creating online video and why video is so darned important in this day and age, and not just in webinars like this, but why YouTube is an important asset, why Facebook video is important, why it's important for you to be creating video content if you're reaching out to a community for any marketing, education, training purposes, why video is so important. So that's what we're going to be talking about next week on Webinar Wednesday, which is our last webinar of the year because Steve moves houses on December 21st. December 13th or 14th is going to be the last day I'm in the office working because this entire office in studio is going to be deconstructed, and then I have to rebuild my new office in the new house. So there's going to be lots of upheaval in my life as we move ahead into next year. So that is our plan moving ahead. So to all of our patrons, thanks so much. And to all of you that stuck around with us today, thank you as well. We certainly appreciate that. All right. I've got, is there a few more questions that rolled in? Because I've got about 5 more minutes that I'm willing to stay on air today. And then I've got to get ready for another event that I'm doing.
Let's see. Let me just double check the chat.
That's right. Steve said 42 is the answer to the universe. That's right. Our goal at the beginning of the year was to do a webinar Wednesday every week. And we knew that we weren't going to get all of them every week, but I think 42 out of 42 webinars in 1 year is a pretty healthy rate. It's been a lot of work. And thanks to April and the whole team for making that work for us. It
looks like we just have one more question.
Okay.
Carlene is asking, I just switched from Outlook to Google now. How do I delete some of the calendar that I no longer need?
Well, you just go in and delete the individual events, I guess. That would be the way that I would do it.
Yeah, it's probably not a mass thing.
I see there's a question there, how Jen is getting on in the world. Jen's doing pretty well as far as I know. She's busy learning a whole new area of the business over there at ClickFunnels, and she's doing well. We miss her. We miss her big time.
Yeah. I do want to say, because I saw there was a comment from somebody in the news feed about questions, and maybe we missed a question.
Mm-hmm.
And I do really try to check the chat and mark them to questions, but there is an option to always change your information to a chat. So it's a drop down and you just change it to a question, so it automatically gets flagged. But today, I'll be honest, the chat moved really fast. So I'm sorry if I've missed any. I did try to double check them.
Okay. And Dave says he's missing 7 to 10 from Evernote Made Easy. Just drop us a note. We'll send you the missing lessons. That's not a problem. Okay.
Yeah, send it to info@dottotech and I'll make sure you get those.
Awesome sauce. April, thank you so much to all of you. See you next week when we're going to be talking about video, and it's going to be, we've got a special offer there because we're going to have a super early bird for anybody that wants to sign up for our new course. We don't have a course on Google Apps ready to go, but we do have a new course on creating online video that we're going to be launching and telling you about next week, that will launch in January of next year. Sorry about the technical glitches again today. I'm going to be on the phone or on support again with Webinar Jam to find out why the pre-recorded video cut out early.
Thanks, guys. It was great to see everybody today.
All right. Till next time. April.